Hello there, this is Warpath 1985 speaking. Today's first day of the 12 Days of War 2025 edition. I shall be discussing the Transformers Studio Series 86 Grimlock and Studio Series 86 Wheelie. And I would like to first mention that it is kind of pretty important for Grimlock. That is, I'll be mainly talking about the history of G1 Grimlock and figures, and characters, and designs, etc. that share that design. I was supposedly a different interpretation of G1 Grimlock, and obviously that's quite a large list of characters and toys. However, I'll do my best in try to just shorten it to a nice, much more streamlined way, technically, because again, there's a lot of different toys of this guy that are mainly based off the G1 character model and character as well. So obviously you have G1 Grimlock, who was first introduced both in the comic book and the cartoon around the same time. However, the comic book was a little late in that general department. However, this won't see this because comic books are kind of just like that. They just like introducing characters a lot later, etc. However, in the G1 cartoon, it was a lot more different in that case, because in the G1 cartoon, a lot of characters were introduced that wouldn't be released until a whole year later. The earliest example that I can really give that's a really good one, which would be Shockwave. He was introduced in episode 1 of the cartoon, but wouldn't get his toy until a whole year later. And also, it's not Hoist, it was Holler, there we go, who was introduced in the cartoon, however wouldn't get a toy, in the sense that it wasn't really technically supposed to be the same character, as Holler will be reintroduced later on in the early 2000s as an entirely different character related to the Constructicons. So yeah, it is kind of interesting in that case. However, in the case of Grimlock and Dinobots, they will be introduced into halfway into the Season 1 series, similar to that of the Decepticons, Skyfire and Jetfire. And also, technically, I forget his name, but there's another character that was introduced halfway through the Season 1. Technically, kind of as Reflector as well. I remember that was Reflector, who was introduced in Season 1, Episode 1 also, but wouldn't have his toy generally released until much later in the toy line. But as a Millaway. So, yeah, Grimlock's part of that general set of characters. And obviously in the cartoon, comic book, etc., Grimlock was the leader of the Dinobots. For toy-wise, he received a G1 figure, a G2 figure, a Beast Force figure, and some various 2000s-esque figures as well. A various anniversary figures as well along with that. Classics also thrown in there as well. Henkei is also there. Tangentially, you also include the MP figures, which do vary in their quality, because a lot of people are like, including myself, are not really big fans of MP figure. You know, yes, the series Grimlock does take a lot of engineering notes from the MP figure of Grimlock. However, my major problem with the figure with design was that I think he's too scrawny looking, and is also a little bit too small. Like, he's very small in comparison to other figures, especially when he was released around the same time as the MP01 Optimus Prime, which was a ginormous figure. So yeah, I wasn't really giving him that much of a good run for a couple of years. Although yes, the classic figure is really nice of a figure, it's not really the Grimlock that most people really wanted. You also have other figures that are based on comic book versions of Grimlock, either colored repaints of a certain, but recolors of Grimlock figures, or just designs that are just tangentially homaging a certain design from that point of time. And other Grimlocks as well will be released later on, and would lean toward that G1 cartoon slash toy aesthetic. Seen it with the Power and Primes figures and various other minifigures, etc., released both from Creo and Super 7 and other companies here and there that were licensed with the Hasbro Transformers license, etc. However, most of those were kind of just desk toys or knickknacks, etc. Sometimes they're just your average vinyl figure. Other times they're a lot more of a gimmicky toy that turned generally. In one case, it was like a toy slash figure that turns into a little battle ball. A battle ball just turned this ball. Pretty weird. So yeah, that pretty much was it for Grimlock for years. All the SP were stuck with the Trans version, which was pretty good overall. It was really the greatest because he was pretty small in comparison to a lot of their figures, including most of the Dinobots for that matter. Until we started to get the new Studio Series figure, which within itself did receive a bunch of other recolors as well. Obviously, those were based off of mainly the G2 versions of a Grimlock, which we did get 2 versions, a prototype Grimlock and a normal standard blue G2 Grimlock. And those are pretty cool as well because we didn't really get a version of the prototype Grimlock at all beforehand, so it was pretty good to see that here. However, it's definitely, they sure did like shell form most of the time, except for the G2 blue Grimlock. However, the other two, including the G2 blue Grimlock, shell formed a lot. I can still find G2 blue Grimlock at my Target, etc. in various quantities. However, the standard normal Grimlock, the reissued one that was released this year, 2025, is still selling relatively well in comparison. However, for Wheelie, that's a little bit more of a stranger story, as Wheelie was mainly a character who was introduced with the film, had played a role, somewhat of a notable role in both season 3 and season 1-ish, technically, of Headmasters, because anime is kind of really weird with their seasons. And generally, that was pretty much it for years for Wheelie. Also, we got his G1 figure, and thereon, I think we did get like some sort of Funkifications version of Wheelie. But we would get other versions of Wheelie as well, mainly just as retools, as redecos of other characters. And a Legends figure as well, which is where Wheelie is mainly now known for. Be like a character who is just mainly made into Legends figures. He did get a really good Titans Return figure, but I never really got it. And when the Studio Series figure came out, that was pretty much my Wheelie. And same goes for the pack-in version that came with Grimlock as well, which we did get a comic book stuff toy style Wheelie for G2 Grimlock, I believe, which was pretty cool. However, it was kind of strange that it was included from the prototype version, which makes sense because you don't really know what to do with that figure. Which is the big reason why not really included the feature of Dinobots, which is unfortunate because we've gotten like other miniaturized figures with them that would be like very cool in the sense that it's just kind of compatible with all of them. So it was unfortunate we did lose that later on. However, for Wheelie, he would get a final, probably his most recent figure, which will be the Retro Wheelie, which will probably get like a standard color version, which is current now, it's based on his toy. It's only really available for pre-order. Some people have gotten like there's like early, technically, some cases some of the illegally bought up aftermarket, or they just found it or got theirs early. It varies most of the time, especially since if you're near like Singapore, that general area, you get stuff a lot more earlier, because Singapore is pretty much the area where people get their stuff earliest the most, and the place where people just buy their stuff for early examples the most. This is kind of the best way I can describe it. But generally, that is it for the both of them. However, I'd love to mention that is kind of like an important note. My Grimlock does have some aging issues because over time he's a little bit loose in certain areas when it comes to his feet and his wings. However, the wings problem is just a general problem with all Grimlocks with this mold. But the legs for the donut mode, particularly the toes, are very loose on my figure. I'm not sure as to why. But yeah, that's about it for Grimlock as a whole. for the toy, he's very nice. First we're talking about the wheelie, the packing wheelie, and it's very basic. Has ball jointed limbs all around. Also has a ball jointed waist that can rotate technically. Also has like a weird ab crunch. It's very weird. Take an arcing back. Sorry. He also has a ball jointed head, which is very small. Like, it looks very good, which hopefully my camera could focus. Which is why, there we go. Like, it's a very nice, well sculpted face. Face. But yeah, it's very unique that you just include this figure as an accessory. Which, once again, my camera's like not really liking focusing on there. For the Studio Series 86 Wheelie, has much more articulation. However, it is like a little bit more hampered, which was again several times like focusing. Which is why I don't like using the autofocus, because it's kind of like very annoying. There you go. So yeah, I forgot to mention both wheelies do come with their little slingshots, which the Core Cross version has a gray one. The packet version has a white one, technically pearlescent plastic. The Core Class figure does a really nice well sculpted face. It also has decent articulation as well to the transformation, which means the figure can look up and down. Ball jointed shoulders, hinge elbows, which can be turned to a swivel, or technically a bicep joint. Ball jointed calves, not calves, thighs. Ball jointed knees, which gives him a knee cut and a nice knee bend. However, the back is hampered by this little panel here because of transformation. Which that is about it for Articulation for Wheelie. Not much, but it does technically serve its purpose. Is that the best way to describe it? So for Grimlock, he only came with one accessory. Now, if you got the comic book version, you would have gotten a bunch more accessories. Like his sword, Sludge's sword, and I believe another one, I forget, is for, I believe it's for Slag. Yeah, you get Slag, Sludge, and Grimlock's swords, the comic book Grimlock sword, mind you, and his crown, and his blaster also. But with the Studio Series version, you only get his blaster, which is very nicely detailed and sculpted, and is a clam type of weapon, which means it's two pieces slapped together, which means it has no gappy bits. So yeah, very interesting. However, the figure itself has very nice articulation. Like for a Lear class of this size, which is relatively large, at around 8.5 inches, it has probably the most dynamic articulation during this time of Lear class toys, because previously it was very clunky, especially in the case of Ultra Magnus, Siege Ultra Magnus, and that, which is what I mean. So he has a ball joint at the neck, which due to this panel can move up and down very well, but it's supposed to be just stationary. So he has a ball joint at the head, there the neck, but just the head. There you go. He has hinged shoulders, which are ratcheted. However, he does unpeg very easily, because again, due to age. But yeah, he has hinged shoulders. Technically a double jointed elbow. Double jointed, technically. But it's not really, just a single joint. He has a wrist rotation. Technically, it can bend inward, like that, but that's meaning for transformation. It's not really intended as well, especially for sword poses, which I'll get to a little later. Especially for sword poses, which I'll get to a little later. He also has a waist rotation, which is not ratcheted. It's just standard friction, I believe. Same goes for the both forward and back kick of the leg, which is very nice in all directions. Has a very nice split. A ratcheted knee. It's soft ratchet, but it's still ratchet nonetheless. A thigh cut, and a very nice knee bend with this piece right here that's supposed to fill it out, which looks very nice. And obviously his wings are articulated as well. If you want to like have a more dynamic look, which is an option, but I rather have it as like that. So if you were able to get the Studio Series 86 Swoop, he would have come with Grimlock's sword, which is based off of his cartoon / G1 figure, which Grimlock can hold like so. Now, this isn't the same general mold, obviously, of the comic book version. It's still different because, again, it's based off his G1 toy, not the comic book version, which has a small little chip in it. And also, I believe it was like a different plastic. I'm not sure. But also, a gimmick that is exclusive with both Grimlock and Slag, which is the pack-in minifigures can plug onto the shoulders of both figures, which recreates a scene from Transformers in the movie technically, but not really quite. It's more or less something that's original to the toy in general, because I recall correctly, they never actually hopped onto the shoulder of any of the Dinobots for that matter. They mainly just rode on top of their backs in Dino mode. So, it's an interesting gimmick, but it's kind of like weird. I personally rather not display Grimlock with Wheelie like that most of the time. I'd rather just put Wheelie in store. I much prefer the standard Studio Series Wheelie over the pack-in figure version. Before I start the transformation sequence, I'd like to first compare Grimlock with the Wheeljack, particularly the Origins figure. Even though yes, do on the Earthrise figure, I just have this figure more handy on me right now because it's literally right next to me all the time when I'm doing this review. So yeah, that's what Grimlock looks like with Wheeljack if you're curious, particularly that of the Origins figure. Studio Series 86 Wheelie transforms very easily. However, it is very clunky in the sense that you have to get certain parts in a certain area, in a certain order of operations, or else everything kind of just falls apart technically. Now that is technically normal, I guess. It is very much an annoying process still, but yeah, I'm supposed to plug in the legs together like so, which once again trying to get them together to the camera lens is kind of hard. Squeeze them together, squish them together, plug these in. That's why. Now there's Wheelie in his little vehicle mode. It's very small, very pint-sized. And if you're curious where the little slingshot goes, it has its own like little storaging peg in the back here. And just goes in there like so. And yeah, there's Wheelie in his little vehicle mode. For Grimlock's transformation, it's very complex, but also still very simple and very quick. So, first I had to go fold the feet, the hands as well. Technically fold them in. Collapse this, push this down, fold this up, open these up, put the tail out, shift that, same goes for this side, After you're collapsing all that in, you just squeeze these all together. It's like, there you go. And there is Grimlock in this T-Rex mode. 80s T-Rex mode, technically. For the 90s, I believe. The one do we know the most from Jurassic Park? Started becoming popular, I believe, in the public eye. But yeah, you can store the gun back here, which is a common feature in most of the Dinobots, at least in Studio Series 86, where all of them can store their weapons on their backs or inside their stomachs. Very interesting of a gimmick, I must say. And if you're curious, this is where the pack and wheelie goes, and it kind of fits in there very loosely. But yeah, here is wheelie. And there you go. And if you're curious where the sword goes, you do have a swoop. You can either peg it on here, on the tail, or here on the shoulder. Doesn't really matter where, just somewhere where it doesn't come very cumbersome. I just prefer to store it like on the tail, like that. For articulation, when it comes to Studio Series 86 Grimlock, it's both very simple yet also very much best to describe it, serviceable, to say the least. Now, he does retain most of his articulation points from Robot Mob, however, it is limited in certain cases, especially when it comes to the arms, since they now will bend backwards instead of forwards. Changing it up. So the head can move up and down. It can open up like so. Release the mouth. It can rotate a swivel joint here, and it does have a blast effect compatible port here, or at least peg, sorry, which is hard to put in there due to its the teeth and etc. Although it does have a hole specifically molded out here for that, which is cool. Although it is kind of weird. Although he's not the only figure in the, at least during this time of Transformers with blast effects to have that. So, I don't know. He has ball jointed shoulders, hinged elbows, ratcheted legs, but no ratchets at the shoulder. It goes outwards and inwards technically, or technically the legs. Has a calf cut as well, and that's about it. You can move up into this more traditional modern day version of dinosaur, not dinosaur but T-Rex position, which is also seen in Devastation as well, I believe, when he's running. Maybe, I'm not sure. But yeah, you can do that. I won't be comparing him with Dinobots, but we'll be comparing him with Wheelie, which, you know, they scale pretty well. But yeah, that's about for day one of the 12 Days of War. Besides that, do recommend Grimlock if you do find the new reissued figure. I'm not sure if the reissued figure does fix some parts here and there. You see in the first release, which it was again to lose like toes and the loose wings and the chest sometimes coming apart. Over the chest coming apart mainly is due to age rather than something similar to that of Sandstorm, where it's just a permanent problem involving mainly just with the molds that sculpt. So yeah, hopefully that version of the figure, if you are able to get it in hand, to fix some of those problems. Besides that, that's all for this technically reveal, but more or less the first day of the 12 Days of War. Like, comment, subscribe, and I shall see you tomorrow for the second day of the 12 Days of War. Bye.